We are live.
Once again.
Once again. Welcome back. If you're watching for a second time, if you're watching for first, welcome to Resistance Reads. This is a space where we discuss power and resistance through literature. I'm Michael Kilman.
Matt Wellstrom.
And today we're covering for V for Vendetta. So first we're going to kind of start out with a summary, and Matt chose this book, so he gets to do the summary today.
Yeah, that's my job this time. All right. Well, V for Vendetta is, I think, probably Alan Moore's masterpiece. He wrote it in conjunction with David Lloyd, the illustrator. It's a book in a lot of ways that's similar to 1984 in that it takes place in a dystopian future England. It's about one person's journey through that. The outcomes are very different, though, which is why I thought it would be interesting to read in tandem with 1984, which is what I did 2 weeks ago. And I thought it really gave me a lot of perspective on it because the actions that the protagonist takes in V for Vendetta affect change where the actions of the protagonist in 1984 do not. The protagonist is Evie. She's the first person we meet in the story, and when we find her, she's a teenage girl. She's, I think, 18 or 19, and she's chosen prostitution because living in the party state in England in 1983 or 4.
It's 1997.
No, it's 1997. It
Yeah,
takes place over the span of 1997 and 1998.
Yeah, and
Guy Fawkes stays for both of them.
I think Evie is actually significantly younger than that. I thought she was like 15 or 16.
You know, that could be true.
So I know in the movie, obviously, she's older. And we'll talk a little about the movie. Watched it, rewatched
For the first time?
No, I
rewatched
it. I watched it in my early 20s, and I think like
when it came out, sure.
When it came out, and I just don't think I had enough knowledge to fully get what the message or understanding was.
I think a lot of people reacted the same way.
So, but obviously, like having become an anthropologist and read a lot of social theory and political systems and all that stuff, I came to understand it.
Yeah, absolutely.
In a much different light.
Yeah.
So,
but basically the events of the book are Evie surviving in this dystopian future England that has chosen to oppress its people after, various world-shattering events happen. A party rises to power amidst all the chaos, and they choose to oppress people, much in the same way that the party in 1984 did. I think the tumultuous events were World War II and then a nuclear war, and I'm fairly certain that's the cause of...
Sorry. I was technology check. Sorry.
And, so Evie is assaulted by some operatives of the state, of the Finger. Yeah, state police, but they operate with impunity. So, of course, the first thing they do when they see a young girl out alone on the streets is decide to attempt to rape her. And they are foiled by the mysterious V, who dresses in a Guy Fawkes mask and cape and hat. It's a pretty cool look.
Yep. You'll see him a lot at protests these days.
Yes. Oh, and especially back in 2013.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
But, then V takes Evie back to his house. I'm realizing, saying this out loud, how clear they're trying to draw the parallel between the two in that naming convention there.
Evie.
Yeah.
V.
Yeah. Takes her back to his Sanctum Sanctorum, and it's decked out with a bunch of really cool, like 20th century memorabilia. There's like a James Cagney poster in there. There's a poster for like a famous film starlet that V met at one point. And it really just expresses his love for like human creativity and art. And I think it's supposed to symbolize the things that he's resisting for. Throughout the course of the book, V and Evie commit various acts of resistance against the state. V has planned a campaign where he the first thing he does is he blows up Parliament, which is, if you can do it, obviously.
Yeah.
And then he starts assassinating the heads of the different departments that run the future state that they live in. And he does it in ironic ways, which I think is funny, and also it really illustrates his love for like literature and
theater. Theatrical.
Extremely
individual.
theatrical. Yeah. That's what
Just
it is.
kind of like you.
I hope, yes. And while that's going on, Evie is expressing her trepidation at murder. She does want to affect change in the world, but she doesn't want to take it to like lethal measures. But and we never learn anything about him, what he looks like or what his name was. We kind of know who he is a little bit by the end. But I think he's very firm in his understanding that this is what he has to do to bring this totalitarian state to a close. And at points they get separated. At one point, Eve just kind of runs away, and she starts
gets scared.
Yeah. She starts a relationship with a, like he's a criminal, but he's kind of a nice criminal, Gordon, I think. And but his criminal life eventually, gets the better of him, and she's kind of left alone again. And at that point, she decides she wants to get revenge on the people who killed him.
Right.
Unfortunately, they are also operatives of the Finger. And so when she's about to commit her first solo assassination, she gets captured and undergoes like a fairly brutal imprisonment and interrogation, which eventually turns out to be orchestrated by V. But during that, she hears the story of a gay film starlet from around the time that the states were falling, who was imprisoned and tortured along with others. And she slips Evie a letter that's written out on toilet paper. And when Evie confronts V about like, why would you do this to me? Why would you make up this person? I felt so much for them. He tells her that wasn't made up. And I think that imprisonment is meant to communicate to Evie the experience that V underwent, or at least a part of it, because he was also experimented on medically, which is what gives him his like amazing abilities to fight and plan and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And at that point, Evie's bought in. She's like, okay, this is what people were going through. This is what you were going through. Mm-hmm. Let's bring this to a close. She really commits herself to her training.
Well, quick with the starlet, it turns out that V, when he was basically imprisoned and experimented on medically, so was this woman. She was in
true.
She was in room 4,
yeah,
and he was in room 5. So he actually received the note of toilet paper from the starlet.
That's right.
And then he passes it on to Evie.
Right, that's what I meant when I said it wasn't faked. He received that. She was experiencing his experience in the prison. And at that point, everything kind of culminates. V does one of his last great acts of terrorism, blowing up another prominent London landmark that I can't quite remember what it was now. It's not as iconic as Big Ben or Parliament. And then he uses the subway to like blow up Fate, basically. Fate is the spying apparatus that the state has implemented, which works a lot like the telescreens. Mm-hmm. It's a way for the administration to disseminate information, and they hired an actor who sounded very soothing to tell everybody what was going on. And that was the first person that V had assassinated.
The voice,
yes.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, they have like the fingers, the eye, the ear, the nose,
yeah.
The voice.
And I guess the head is where Fate is?
The head is where Fate is, and then that's also where the leader like lives.
Yeah. Yeah, I've neglected to mention the leader too much because Michael has a lot of thoughts on the leader. The leader really stood out to him, which I think is, you got it. Like you get the whole point of this. And so V basically does he he like kind of does a little seppuku throughout the story. There's a detective that is onto them. I think V views him as the only honest man in the government, which I thought was really interesting. And they confront one another in the tunnels when he's implementing his final act of terrorism, and they kind of both kill each other.
Right.
And at that point, Evie brings V's body back to their sanctum and sort of assumes his role, but at the same time, she saves the detective's like junior partner from some sort of danger, which I don't quite remember.
Yeah, it was
the specifics about now.
Well, it was like the aftermath, because after V's
there was like rioting.
There's rioting, and it's an intense situation for
absolutely
afterwards.
Yeah.
So yeah, and it's ultimately though like the final act, the train. He leaves that for Evie to do it
to initiate. You're right. Yeah. Absolutely.
And they do that in the film as well, but also in the book, he like doesn't tell her. She has to puzzle it out for herself to figure out. In the film, he flat out tells her, if you want to blow up the whole situation. And in the film, they blow up Parliament at the end rather than the beginning. So there's a lot of really very kind of misordering in the film.
Interesting.
And I thought the film was really good. Okay. But as I told Matt before, I think the comics were too radical for Hollywood. So,
absolutely. I can't believe they even tried to make this.
Well, it was the Wachowskis.
Yeah.
It was the Wachowskis who had just come hot off The Matrix much longer
They produced
before.
it. Yeah, they didn't direct it. I think it might have been a better movie if they had directed it. But
they did the screenplay. That's I think, and they, they're pretty, a lot of their kind of stuff tries to be radical. So,
yeah. You'll hear a lot about Speed Racer being one of the most radical movies of the 21st century.
Really?
Yeah. And it's a good one.
Is it?
It's a good movie.
Is
absolutely.
It? Okay.
I haven't looked at it through that lens, but I do remember liking it a lot. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I haven't watched it.
You should.
So.
It's really good.
Okay. So that's a pretty good core summary. And I think one of the other final pieces is that ultimately Evie inherits V's mantle.
Yes, but and I think that was... He communicates that he wants her to do that, and also wants her to act in a different way than him.
Right.
Which I think it's really interesting because both of these totalitarian states have arisen from a revolution that was violent.
Yeah,
and then violent leaders took over.
Right.
And implemented an even worse system.
Right.
And I think so V understands that he cannot be the one who leads in the aftermath of his revolution.
And that's like just true if you look at many of the most famous revolutionaries of the 20th century, especially during the Cold War. Like Castro is a great example, right?
Right.
Here's a man who is a radical, who is a revolutionary, who helps topple, this oppressive system, and then himself becomes a dictator.
Yeah, for life, absolutely.
And and I think that's actually, and this is actually a really interesting point because, there's a really good book called Why Civil Resistance Works. And it really does profile how when you have a violent takeover of government, it has a tendency to violently create a new violent system. So it just continues to regenerate violence. Because, if you're thinking about what it might be like to be in a place like Iraq or Afghanistan in the early 20th century, you're talking about ultimate brutality. Like the kinds of things that these kind of violent regimes create are brutal people. Because I think unless, and I've never experienced this, but maybe some veterans have out there who are watching this, but to be in combat, to see people's lives destroyed around you, and Chris Hedges, the political activist and journalist, he talks about this, being a war correspondent, hearing the bombs come down around you, not knowing at any time when your life will be taken, when your family lives are taken, seeing women and children slaughtered, or, in the case of like a fascist state, seeing innocent people being taken or black bagged, as they call it in this series, like seeing those kinds of things over and over. If you're inclined to resist, you're more likely to become to resist with brutality.
Sure.
And it's hard to also, we have this ideal that civil resistance is always kind of peaceful, but like, there's a really great book that came out a number of years ago. I think 5 or 10 years ago. I forget the exact date. I read it in grad school. It's called "This Nonviolent Stuff Will Get You Killed," and it was about the militant side of civil rights in the '60s, and really specifically through community defense and kind of stuff. So I think, going into reading V for Vendetta, I kind of already knew that you have these kinds of different kind of protest systems for fighting fascist governments, and you can't really easily separate the radical from the nonviolent, because if you look at history, if you look at Gandhi, for example, there was a radical arm. There was a radical arm of resistance that he kept trying to rein in. I mean, several of his major fasts where he almost starved to death because he refused to eat until the situation was resolved. Several of those fasts were trying to get the radical element under control.
Yeah, absolutely.
In the American civil rights movement, you have Martin Luther King Jr.,
John Lewis.
But you have a lot of peace. A lot of people looking for peace and nonviolent, passive resistance. It's not when you talk about resistance, it's not just allowing people to plow you over. It is clogging up streets. It's boycotts. It's sit-ins, and all this other kind of stuff. But he would not have been possible without. I mean, he had an arsenal in his house. This is well documented, well known, because, his house was firebombed by white supremacists.
All the time.
So he had a lot of guns in his house. He wasn't afraid to defend his house if he needed. And he had also other members of his neighbors who did armed patrols around his house. They all took turns protecting one another. But also the Black Panthers.
Yeah.
Which started as a community defense force, primarily because, white supremacy was terrorism.
Absolutely.
You'd show up in the dead of night and they would drag people out of their houses, kicking and screaming, and lynch them or execute them or tar and feather them or all kinds of other terrible things. Like, how do you deal with the KKK? You get your own guns.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what the Black Panthers was. But of course, the Black Panthers also had a community support side where they gave kids lunches. They organized like peaceful kind of stuff as well. So
transportation to schools.
Right.
Yeah.
So when we think of like resistance and we think, it is, and you see this both in the book and the film, there isn't just a nonviolent component. There's also radical elements to these kinds of things.
Absolutely.
And so, dealing with a fascist state requires much more intense kind of acts to derail.
Yes, exactly. And I think that is the missing key in our current alignment, that we have in our world. We don't have an organized resistance to the fascism we're experiencing. We have a bunch of people who want to resist and no leadership with which to do so.
Yeah.
And that's what V is trying to arrange by doing these big, bold acts, is by calling attention to himself and the lengths he's willing to go, so that when Evie puts on the V outfit, she looks like him and they all will organize around her, but she will have a different...
She's not so eager to kill.
She won't kill. And she says she won't kill even for V by the end. Excuse me. And, but she can be a figurehead that they recognize.
Right.
A figurehead that took action on their behalf to topple their oppressors.
Right.
And that's what we don't have. We don't have someone who's willing to topple the oppressors. We don't have a Senate that's even willing to get rid of the filibuster so that when we have 4 years of power, we can actually get things done.
Yeah.
Because they have too much respect for the system that oppresses us.
No, we have shitty Chuck Schumer.
Yeah, fuck that guy. Dick Durbin retired, and I'm so happy to see him go.
Yeah. The other thing, and I think that V for Vendetta made me really think about this side, is that, we talked about the control of history in 1984, right? It's not just about the control of history. It's about creating the right myth structure for your fascist empire.
Sure.
And what V effectively does is he gives people a story of freedom. And he gives them, he kind of he helps them to reimagine the mythology. He plants all these seeds for these new myths, and then he himself makes himself into a mythological figure.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's also fascinating to see that he intentionally does not martyr himself, but he passes it on without telling anybody. And I'm really not sure how to think about that exactly, but I think martyrdom has a tendency to...
It's co-op.
It gets co-opted, and it also does have a tendency to feed kind of the violence mythology more.
Yes.
If he continues to linger on and he stops committing like violent acts when they no longer need to be done, because what he is doing, he's not doing indiscriminate slaughter. He's not strapping on a bomb and running into a civilian population. Yeah. He's playing chess.
Yeah.
Every move is strategic. Mm-hmm. Every act of violence he does has very intentional purpose. And also, too, I think it's important to divine that, like, violence isn't something we do against property.
Right.
Property destruction is not...
It's not violence. No.
This is often co-opted in mainstream news as, look at these violent protesters, right?
Who are smashing windows.
They're smashing windows.
They're smashing something that you can't even see.
And not only that, there's also agent provocateurs,
Mm-hmm.
which if you don't know what that is people hired by the government, in some cases by the police forces themselves, to basically go in and do property destruction on purpose.
To discredit.
I have seen this personally myself in protests.
Same, yeah.
And, I mean, you also have a history of this, like many of the historical Union uprisings and massacres that followed, like Ludlow. Mm-hmm. You have agent provocateurs, the Pinkerton detective agency.
That was mostly what they did.
That's mostly what they did. They were agent provocateurs. Yeah. They still exist today. I don't know exactly what they do.
Oh, it's like security bullshit.
It's security bullshit, I'm sure. They advertise like security, but I'm not sure like what that security looks like.
Mercenariness.
Right. So there's a lot of times that you'll see systems try to co-opt protests and create all kinds of messes of communication. And, there's nothing that terrifies a state more than a whole bunch of people flooding the streets and refusing to move.
Except maybe one guy that they can't catch, who's a one-man protest.
Right, who's a one-man protest who is so clever that he can't, But I mean, that to be able to pull that kind of level of...
Well, they created the seed for their own downfall.
Right.
They were experimenting on V because they wanted a super soldier or something, It's like what the CIA did, or what was it, the FBI? Who did the experiments on people with LSD trying to create mind control?
Oh, that was CIA for sure.
Yeah.
The Men Who Stare with Goats is a great film that is kind of a satire, but it's also really what they did. What was it? What was the term, the code name for that? It's super famous. It begins with an M, doesn't it?
I'm so mad that I can't think of it
I can't think of it right now either. Anyway, if you're in the audience,
shout it out,
right? But it ultimately, obviously, like, the mind control didn't work. Mm-hmm. But like the Russians were doing this too during the Cold War. There was like this war the tactics to try to brainwash people.
Well, it just goes to show that all these governments are so willing to experiment on human beings to try and create like a psychic or something that they think they'll be able to control.
Right.
They're trying to give people superpowers in the attempt to like utilize them like a gun or something like that.
Right.
Turn them into an object.
Right.
They did that with V, and he just burned the whole fucking place to the ground.
Right.
And like pieced out, and then went on a campaign of what they thought was revenge, but was actually justice.
Yeah.
By overthrowing their whole regime, which is
literally burns the place to the ground. The place they put him in. They never tell you how he does it, but you get the sense that
they
he figured
do
out
because
chemicals.
because he requested all of these chemicals to do gardening with, and then he turned it into
I missed that
to gas, to poisonous mustard gas, and napalm.
Right.
Which is, and they're like, no, he's fine. We have control of him. And now he seems crazy, but maybe he's just super smart, or maybe they're both the same thing. Mm-hmm. And he's like hulked out now. That's fine, because he can garden really good, and he's totally obeying. It soothes him. And then it's amazing.
He blows the whole
The best
place up.
jailbreak since
Yeah.
the Count of Monte Cristo.
Yeah, for sure. So, all right, some significant passages. I've got so many marked here.
Michael took a lot of notes, which
a
I love.
lot of notes. Yeah. I think there's kind of there's about 30% of the population who, with the right kind of social pressures, tend to lead towards authoritarianism.
That seems right.
Because it's like logical. It's like this idea that having clear decisions, there's no ambiguity, things are black and white,
Right.
someone tells you how to do things. I mean, when we look at dictatorships, and we can look at China right now, right? China gets shit done.
They're very effective.
China is leading all kinds of crazy technological revolutions. We're actually falling behind to a lot of things with China, whether
DeepSeek, man.
DeepSeek, whether it is their solar revolution, whether
they're good
is
at the EVs.
the
too.
EVs.
Yeah.
They basically have cornered the EV market. They're making Tesla look like a chump, which I think is part of this whole tariff mess.
Oh, you are right about that.
So-
I'm certain, because Europe and Africa are about the Chinese EVs because they're more efficient and they're cheaper.
They're super cheap. They're more efficient.
Yeah.
Better battery systems. They essentially have like driverless cars over in China to pick you up. That's no problem. China has done some incredible things.
Yeah.
But also people have a fascist government.
The people are the resource that is achieving that. They're literally being harnessed by their government to make these moves.
Right.
When all that stuff we said that sounded complimentary about China, that's not. That's just that's their achievements. But the cost is
freedom.
Yeah.
The cost is freedom. And it is also important to exercise that kind of power. Takes a huge state apparatus. I can't remember who gave it, where I read it before, but it's this systems with greater complexity have a greater likelihood towards catastrophe, because there's so many moving parts. And I know this is also true of technology. When you have technological systems that are so large and widespread, and so many systems interacting with so many systems, it only takes a couple of little threads to pull in the right places for things to come.
And that's why the Tesla, that's why Teslas are getting dunked on so hard by other car manufacturers around the world, is because Silicon Valley has this reward incentive structure set up where they come out with a shiny new thing and they capture our imaginations in the US and Western Europe for 4 or 5 years. We're like, ooh, this new thing is the key to the future. Whether it be going all the way back to MP3 players, but smartphones and all that stuff. Every time they come out with one of those, everybody starts aping them, and they're they get this monetary incentive because their stocks go up and they all become billionaires. But they haven't come up with a shiny new innovation in 10 years, really. They just keep faking it. And that's what AI is right now. But that's also what Teslas are, because they were cool and innovative 10 years ago. Maybe even more. They might have come out longer ago than that. Time doesn't mean anything anymore. But Elon Musk is not the inventor of Tesla. He's just the CEO.
He's sued to make him look like that.
Yeah, he pushes people out of their companies. That's what he does. He's like a hermit crab that just gets in there and takes your shit. But since he's not an innovator, and since he has a command structure that he always implements where he's the top dog and he tells everybody what their deal is, they haven't been able to retain the people, the brains that came up with an innovative new electric vehicle. So they just make it more complex, which is why they have all these recalls all the time. They're they're not actually able to make things better. They're able to make the system seem fancier or more complex, so people want to get a new one.
Bells and whistles.
It's bells and whistles. And that's why he's fallen far behind. But it's a great demonstration of what you're talking about.
Yeah.
The more you make the system complicated, the easier it is for it to break or to not get the upload that it needed in its fucking iPad that controls everything in your car. Who thought that was a fucking good idea? Come on.
Yeah. It's bread and circuses at the end of the day.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So it's just mass distraction and good food and good entertainment to keep us docile and all this other kind of stuff.
Yeah, we gotta get that second screen TV, man.
Right, and the and this is just true with streaming culture. It's all kinds of things like obviously like not podcast streaming.
No,
watch our podcast.
That's good. That's so net good for society.
But I'm talking about
Joe
like
Rogan out of the situation.
Yeah, get Joe Rogan out of the situation for sure. And they're finally calling him out too. Like they're finally people starting to say that I've been saying for years. Yeah, like man. Joe Rogan is a problem. If you have that kind of power, you have to hold people accountable. Right?
It's just the way it goes. Yeah.
Even Malcolm Gladwell, who was just kind of.
That guy is insufferable too.
I mean, he has some interesting things to at least contribute, but he at least is like he was like calling out Joe Rogan the other day.
I think Malcolm Gladwell's the like nonfiction equivalent of Elon Musk. He takes other people's ideas, misrepresents them, and sells you a book that sounds smart.
I think there's some good things. I'll disagree with you.
Okay. I
think it'd be useful. Yes, we can disagree about something, right? Let's see. What was it? Happiness as a person. Is a I can't read my own notes. Oh, it's about prison. It's about happiness is a prison, not a person. Happiness is a prison, the most insidious one. V talks about this actually extensively. We're taught to chase happiness for and pleasure our whole lives, and obviously that's not realistic. But you see this, you see this in like oppression release valves, like The Secret, right? You can manifest your desires and be happy and fulfilled and successful. Absolutely. You can make vision boards that make reality come true. These are also tools of oppression and power. Grift. Yeah. I mean,
and happiness is a prison that traps you. The most insidious one is a brilliant thought because that is the fundamental nature of capitalism. Also,
right? Like the choice. I have choices, therefore I am happy.
Well, and also you're working all the time to buy the thing that will make you happy. But buying things doesn't make you happy. That's stupid. Yeah, it's a temporary dopamine release. Right. Like sometimes you need things, and if you can buy them, that is nice.
For sure.
But like buying doesn't inherently make you happy, but capitalism definitely wants you to think it does because it keeps you bought into the system. Man, I sound like a revolutionary.
That's why I like commercialism. In commercials, everyone is happy or powerful or sexy or
they're sad and then
they're sad and then they get happy because all these are the solutions to what ails you and and of course that's nothing new. I mean marketing has been a thing for a very, very long time. Probably a century and a half. We've had significant marketing systems. Once you started getting media to scale, you started
absolutely. I was trying to think of when it would have happened. It would be like post-printing press, obviously, but like not that post.
Probably
maybe.
The dawn of radio is where we start getting the rise of significant.
I was thinking like newspapers and magazines probably predated
that's true.
them.
No, because actually originally, so when I was studying media, I was studying the history of journalism and power. You actually see in the early 20th century, after the radio is all around, this switch from printing newspapers for basically public goods, for getting information out there, for journalism and reporting, and just basically using the cost of the paper to cover everything.
Right.
And then you suddenly get a bunch of newspapers in the early 20th century that start using advertising.
Oh yeah, that sounds right.
And that's how
I bet the Post was like the first one to just like take my soul, give me ads.
Yeah. And a lot of that really begins in the United States and England, and then begins to spread. But like what you actually see is the consolidation of media, because now these ad-driven things make so much more money, they can begin buying up all the local newspapers.
That's where you get Hearst from and Pulitzer. Absolutely.
Yeah, and you get like the consolidation of media. Noam Chomsky talks about this in his book Manufacturing Consent, him and Edward Herman, and how this is essentially the consolidation of media presents true conversations.
Wait, Edward Herman?
Yeah.
That's so wild. Edward Herman, the actor, plays William Randolph Hearst in a movie.
Really?
The Cat's Meow. It's about a murder that happened on his boat.
I didn't know that.
Charlie Chaplin was there.
Oh, wow.
Played by Eddie Izzard.
Okay.
Amazing. Sorry, that was a huge tangent on our
there you go. But yeah, so Edward Herman, Noam Chomsky wrote Manufacturing Consent, a political economy of mass media, and look at all the different systems and how that stuff is controlled. And by the consolidating that, you're consolidating the story. Because it used to be that every city had dozens of newspapers, and all your neighbors would be reading different newspapers, and they would be getting different perspectives. So with those perspectives, when you're at work, you'd like at the lunch break, you'd talk about, oh, well, I read this in this paper, well, I read this in this paper. And so then people would kind of find middle ground between different kind of issues rather than getting in the silos that we have now.
Right.
And fascism requires silos.
Yes,
Absolutely. It requires a single message. Well, hence the voice in V for Vendetta.
Absolutely. The only source of information in that society is one guy, essentially.
It's state actor.
Yeah.
And then after he's taken out by V very quickly, after he silences the voice, as it were, they begin this whole long campaign of trying to find alternatives through fear, like broadcasting all kinds of fear to keep people docile. But in the case of this, I think it actually desensitizes them.
I think that's right.
So that was part of V's tactic.
That was his tactic,
desensitize people to fear, because if you're seeing a constant 24/7 feed of fear-based stuff, now how it happens in reality, I don't know if it quite happens the same way as in V for Vendetta, but it does desensitize people, or it makes them become at least apathetic to the state narrative.
Well, and that's an interesting observation, because I do feel like our 24-hour-a-day news cycle has also desensitized people. I don't know if it's desensitized us to fear, and I guess that wasn't their intent.
Right.
You know, the
outrage.
way that it's outrage that they use.
It's less fear and it's more outrage, although the outrage is coupled. You can't decouple the fear entirely from outrage, right? Because the immigrants are coming for you, right?
Right.
That's how the immigrants are coming for you has been a message for decades.
Yeah.
I mean, longer than that, really, in American history. I mean, you can go all the way back to the Pacero program, post-World War II.
Or you can go all the way back to when the Irish immigrated. Right.
Right. I mean, you have New York Times, the front page of the New York Times is 1883, I think it was. It's like a picture of like Irish beating up on the police on St. Patrick's Day.
Well, cops are bastards. They knew it,
right? So anyway, they but they look like subhuman.
Oh, they do.
Monsters. Yeah. They don't look like you guys. You can look this up. Looking at like the history of Irish discrimination. Yeah. So and then of course quotas for certain immigrants from certain parts of the world.
Absolutely. The Chinese Exclusion Act.
Chinese Exclusion Act, all kinds of stuff too. If you're really interested in this kind of stuff and looking at the legal side of it, I'd recommend reading Dr. Jacqueline Batallora's book, Birth of a White Nation. Oh. It's the legal side of how you created exclusionary policies and how you basically created whiteness in the law as the dominant force. So that's a really good and interesting one.
Kind of shifting it from owning property and being male to just being white.
Right. Yeah. Right. Which is, gradually happened over the 19th and then very heavily in the 20th century. In part, it has to do with the Reconstruction period after the Civil War, because all of a sudden you had a sincere black body politic where you had people winning elections in, they
were sweeping the tables.
They were sweeping the tables. So you had all these, suddenly you had these black senators and black congressmen coming in. And then, of course, they immediately the white people were freaking out and were like, we got to get this situation under control. And that's where you get the birth of Jim Crow and all this other stuff. And
thanks, Supreme Court.
Right. Like the Dred Scott decision.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, man. Absolutely. So kind of switching gears though a little, because we've kind of talked about a lot about fascism, and then also like 1984, we talked about that a lot last time. So
sure. I think we can move on. I think they are very similar. The methods that they use in 1984 are a little more sophisticated, but I think the general setups are basically the same.
Well, and as you were saying last time, this book could very much be a response to 1984, especially.
It felt like it was.
It was written in the early 1980s.
83, yeah.
83. Yeah. So it's written in the early 1980s. So it's
actually, it was written in two parts. It was written in 83, and then I think it was concluded. I think the second half was written in 88. Okay. So it might have been the second half might be more. It was, and there was a big break. I think the second half might be more of a response to Thatcher's England, which I think is really interesting too, because I mean, it's really easy to see the comparisons.
Right, and more is English. you know.
Exactly.
But I mean, you can see some parallels in Reagan as well.
Reagan and Thatcher were of a type, for sure.
They were definitely of a very particular type.
Yeah.
You know, towards the end of the Cold War, it was very interesting to kind of, you know, see
they
the
were
direction.
Ruthless, man.
Oh yeah. But I think some of the most radical parts of V for Vendetta was really some of the political philosophy they throw at you. And I kind of had the same experience that Matt did with 1984.
Shook you to your core.
It shook me to my core, and I was like, where the fuck has this book been for my entire life? Like, you know, and I have read a lot of political theory, you know, and of course, like I've looked at from an anthropological lens, you know, like anthropologists like David Graeber, who wrote a really excellent book about protest called Direct Action and Ethnography, that really looks at how do you successfully interact.
Wait, is that one of the Davids from that book you loaned me?
Yeah. The Dawn of Everything.
Yeah.
The Dawn of
Nice.
Everything. Also another excellent read because it helps us to rethink this kind of bullshit political mythology that either we require a state to be peaceful or we were somehow naturally, inherently always good, hunter-gatherers in this kind of Garden of Eden.
The arc of history.
The moral arc of history.
Yes,
I mean, it's like, but no, it's not. It's complicated. Like
you got to do the work.
You got to do the work.
Yeah.
You got to do the work. And Graeber really, I mean, he really kind of, there's a lot of overlap between V for Vendetta and Graeber's kind of thinking. I don't know if he probably has read V for Vendetta, given his political leanings. But Direct Action, he kind of does an ethnography of an anarchist collective and looking at some of their actions and what they're doing. You know, he looks at. He also looks at, and this is a huge problem with a lot of resistance movements, how they become kind of purity movements where you have to like police each other and, you know, people kind of one-up each other and then you get kind of like, you get all kinds of infighting.
I think that's the seed in at the heart of the rot in the leftist movement right now.
Yeah,
it's
purity.
Purity.
It's this constant like, are thou holy enough to be a part of this movement? You know, you're never allowed to make mistakes. But
you misgendered someone 10 years ago.
Right.
So you're canceled now.
Right. So that obviously creates like, and then ends up pushing people the other direction.
Absolutely.
Because they're like, well, if I can't do anything right, fuck you, I'm going to go the other.
And Doppelgang, what is Naomi Klein's newest book?
The Doppelganger, Doppelganger. We talked about it a little bit last time, but
that's what happens.
That's what happens, right? So that's it. So Graeber does talk about this. He also has a wonderful chapter titled "Why Police Hate Puppets."
Is it because of Punch and Judy?
It's because of a lot of things. It's because of a lot of things. But he talks about how a really effective protest create these massive art pieces as they're marching, and you can kind of like leave them in the middle of the street, and it takes hours upon hours upon hours to like remove these things.
Oh, that's amazing.
And so it's like using art as art installations to really shut down the system and cause the economic system to hemorrhage money and force people to come to the table.
Pretty good.
It's really interesting kind of stuff. But you know, one thing that this is a quote from V for Vendetta. True order is voluntary order. The choice to opt in, to choose one another, is true freedom. As opposed to like the fascist, you're going to do what I say or else.
Yeah.
And so, you know, this is talking about collectivism. This is talking about, you know, systems that, you know...
only going to give 100% of your like effort to something that you choose. If you're being forced to do something, the best you're operating at is like 75%.
Right. Well, think about your fucking bullshit jobs, right?
Yeah.
Like you think about you go into work, and I experience this right now with Starbucks.
Sure.
Right? You go in there and they give all these policies of these things you have to do, and some of them make sense, of course, but some of them are just like nonsense. Yeah. It's like, why are we doing this thing? Like writing on cups? Come on. Who cares? You know, does that, you know, then of course you hear these little, and of course these little anecdote things that they spread around, like, oh, this saved someone's life because they saw you are loved and they felt so much better about themselves in the aftermath, and you're just like,
oh my God.
What a load of horseshit.
Someone didn't commit suicide because a Starbucks barista wrote "You are loved" on their cup.
That's some of the things that they're telling us.
That's wild.
So you see these kinds of things going around, right? And then people resist all the time because they're not bought in.
Yeah.
And that's the same thing with political systems. And this is also why you elect people like Trump.
Yeah.
Because you can't convince people that to buy in to this kind of effort that they're going to have to take, in part because we're all working so many goddamn hours all the time, we don't have any energy.
Well, and you can't mount a convincing like counterpoint to Trump if you're just doing Republican light.
Right.
You know, you're not offering them, if they don't have a choice, if they don't have a visible, clear, distinct choice, if they don't have a Democratic Party that actually wants to like support people and protect workers' rights and human rights, then why not just vote for the funny one? You know?
Yeah.
Because Trump was funny for a long time. I don't know if he is anymore. I can't really bear to look at him.
No.
So I don't know what he's saying now. But for a long time, he had a pretty good like crowd work thing going on, you know?
I mean, there are linguists who have written books on how excellent he is with his rhetoric.
That makes sense.
He is he does. I mean, we underestimate Trump, and you see this all the time with the Democratic Party. You see people say things like, "Oh, he has dementia and he's failing," and all this other kind of stuff, and he's crazy and he's insane or he's stupid.
That's basically just them doing a Trump right there.
Right.
You know.
Right. So, but the reality is, he is calculated. He is very intelligent. He is a hell of an orator, and he's dangerous.
Yeah.
And when we kind of try to, I think that's partly people trying to make themselves feel better. Like, well, we can't go the fascist route because he's an idiot and all this other stuff. Right. And it is true that he is an egomaniac. I mean,
absolutely.
He did shoot himself in the foot with the recent tariffs a little bit, for sure.
Probably. I mean, he mostly like shot us all in the face with it. But...
Yes, he shot himself with his poll numbers. He shot us all in the face, and people are not clamoring on the streets yet to get rid of him. I mean, you're starting to see some resistance and stuff. But another quote: "Order without justice, without love or liberty, which cannot long postpone their world's descent to pandemonium."
Ooh.
So that there is a lot of really amazing quotes that V is telling Evie throughout this text.
He's doing. I remember reading this when I was a kid and thinking it felt like, what if Batman wasn't a billionaire? Mm-hmm. But it's even better than that. Mm-hmm. Like, he's not training up a Robin, you know, like, to be a Batman. He's training up, like, he's training her to be better than him. Mm-hmm. And that's what all good teachers and mentors do, is they want you to excel past where they were, you know? They're not trying to, like, let you grow up and they're like, okay, you can be Batman, you can be Nightwing, you can be, like, funny Batman. Like, no, that's not That's not what V's after. He's after, like, he's teaching her.
And a true teacher does not withhold skill and knowledge.
No.
Like, you see, when there's a kind of withholding of certain information to continue to lord power over the apprentice.
Right, yeah.
So, and you know, in fairness, V does keep secrets from her from a long time before she's ready. And he makes her read a bunch of, like, books and political philosophy.
Because you don't start someone in like political science with Noam Chomsky.
Right.
You know?
Don't start that way.
You gotta like give them the stuff that they're ready for.
Right.
You know? And being a good teacher is I shouldn't speak on this, but I think, because you are a teacher, is what I mean. But I think you want to guide them through the process and give them stuff that they can digest and and then and make that harder and harder as they go along,
right? So
they can become excellent. You're like tempering them,
right?
You're forging them.
That's why, like, high school is supposed to give you the basis of, you know, how all these things work, and then you go to higher education,
right?
And this is also why I see a lot of students, and you know, this is not even specifically commentary on our particular moment about how students no one reads,
right?
But you know, that's part of the reason we're doing this podcast. Get you all reading. But like, I think a lot of students who did really well in high school get up to college and they go, no, I'm over my head.
Yeah.
Because you don't realize what you're getting now is the much harder, more nuanced, deeper kind of experience of what the world is, how the world works, why people do the things they do. You know, history is complex. Like, if you like history because you think it makes you feel good about your nation, you're not fucking reading history. You're reading propaganda.
Absolutely.
Okay?
And I think the structure they have set up right now is that high school inculcates students, it indoctrinates them into appreciating the state that they live in.
Right.
That's not preparation for college.
No.
That's not preparation. That doesn't teach critical thinking. It doesn't teach them like the study skills that they would actually need to like really succeed in college.
But Matt, they can feel radical because they read 1984. Right? So back to that whole
No,
thing.
absolutely. That's why I think it neuters that book.
It neuters the book on purpose, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't give you, and
It inoculates them.
it inoculates them to radical thinking.
Yeah.
Because, and then you can get, just so stories all over the place. But yeah, here's another really good quote. Authority allows two roles, the torturers, and the tortured. Doesn't really have the space, like authoritarianism doesn't have the space for exploration. It stymies progress. It stymies critical thought. Of course, the war on woke, the war on diversity, which we mentioned a little bit last time. What you're doing is you're taking genius, you're taking potential of humans to do incredible, innovative, imaginative things, and you're saying, no, you can't do that.
You're a cog.
You're a cog.
Yeah.
You have to be just a gear in the whole system. We don't want you to be misshapen. This is why the whole, fuck Robert F. Kennedy Jr. with this whole autism thing. Okay,
dude, that guy sucks so hard.
Yeah,
and it's
he's
weird
a eugenicist.
His dad was pretty fucking cool. His dad was anti-racist in the 60s, and he's just like the biggest. RFK Jr. is the biggest piece of shit.
But that's the creation of the autism registry and stuff, because autism people like myself are a problem.
Yeah.
We're a problem because we don't conform to norms. We challenge systems. We see the patterns. We see the holes and the flaws.
Process information in like a slightly different way, which could be a huge fucking asset.
Right.
But no, like you're different, so that's bad.
Yeah. So this whole registering eugenics, it's a way of clamping down on different approaches to thinking.
Yeah.
Because a lot of scientists are autistic.
Yeah.
A lot of them are.
Yeah. Hyperfocus is one of the telltale signs of autism, but it's so useful.
Yeah, it can be so useful.
And that's basically the reason V is able to think 7 steps ahead of the party in the book is because he thinks differently than they do.
Right.
He processes information in a slightly different way. The detective can't even figure out how to think like V until he takes like ayahuasca or something like that.
No, he takes a whole bunch of LSD.
LSD, of course.
And then he goes to the ruins of the prison he broke out
and he
of.
figures it out.
And he finally figures it out, right? Because he had to get out of the normal state of thinking completely. So that was a kind of idea.
Yeah.
Here's another great quote, and I know I'm just reading quotes, but it's just...
It's full of them, yeah.
Equality and freedom are not luxuries to lightly cast aside. Without them, order cannot long endure before approaching depths beyond imagining.
That's a good one. That's better than the one that always gets attributed to Benjamin Franklin or Thomas Jefferson.
Yeah.
Where like if you're not willing to... What is it? If you're not willing to fight for freedom, you don't deserve it, or something like that.
Yeah, something like that. But
just so one note.
But this is so much because it really like we cannot have a good social order without equality and freedom. We cannot.
Exactly.
And and that's why we have to have rights. That's why you can't black bag people. That is literally what our government is doing right now with some of these students.
Sending them overseas.
Sending them to Ecuador or sending them to Guantanamo or disappearing people in some cases. Yeah. And so this whole the habeas corpus, the right to a free, fair trial, a right to having representation and a lawyer. All these things are fundamental, are absolutely fundamental in order to maintain any semblance of freedom.
Well, it's a wild situation, too, when you realize that the government has actually been black-bagging people for our entire adulthoods. There's Supreme Court cases about them getting, like, people getting... being accused of being terrorists and sent to Poland in the early fucking part of the century. And
well, look at the Patriot Act.
And it's because, absolutely. It's because we've been in a state of war and emergency for 25 years.
Yeah.
Which is fucking ridiculous. Because it was not, at no point was this an emergency. Like, we suffered a consequence to our foreign policy in 9/11 And that was it. That was all that was going on. You know, and all of this has been a reaction to that. It was literally just an excuse. Fucking Naomi Klein, once again, talks about that in the Shock Doctrine.
Yeah.
Which is as good a book as this.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's just a pretext, man. It's just a pretext. They just want to be authoritarian. Bush Jr. started it, and we've just been rolling along.
Well,
Obama and Biden both stayed the course, too. They weren't better.
No.
I think it's really important to remember that they weren't better.
Right.
We liked them more. Obama was handsome and charming, and Joe Biden was like your goofy uncle. But, like, you know, issuing a warning about, like, a technocratic future state on your way out the door after being president for 4 years is a bullshit fucking move. You know, you're not Eisenhower. And Eisenhower basically just did the same thing. Anyway,
Yeah.
So maybe it.
Yeah, and it's I mean, we've had this since we've always had this, really, right?
I think if you look at the existence of American history, I remember I remember learning this in a political science class. There are like 3 years in our entire history where we have not been in a state of war at some point. You know?
Yeah, or
like 3 years.
policing action, or sending troops somewhere.
Whether or not we're calling it a war.
Right.
Yeah.
Vietnam was a police action.
I know, right?
So,
it was a big old police action.
Yeah, that's right. Well,
we had to drop napalm on them because of police.
Well, that's how you're able to keep from Congress getting in the way.
And NATO and stuff like that.
You need Congress to declare war.
Yeah.
You can't have the president declare war. But they figure the loophole is, I can declare a policing action, right?
The French are really bogged out here. We need to go police the situation.
And this is why we need to fucking can executive orders.
Absolutely.
We should, I know there is supposed reasons for executive orders in times of emergency that a president can do something, but you're telling me that you can't convene Congress to sit down.
If you need to go to war?
Yeah.
Like, come on.
Yeah.
What are they for?
Right. I mean, how fast in 1941 did the Congress vote for war?
Oh, I mean, like that. Yeah, exactly. Like,
so it's not like if there's a real reason for these things, you have to go through it.
Yeah, 9/11 wasn't fucking Pearl Harbor, although it's felt like Pearl Harbor in our life. You know? It wasn't the initiation of something. It was the consequence of 30 years of foreign policy on our part, and we just couldn't deal with that.
Yeah. Well, and I could also argue that Pearl Harbor, we were kind of playing both sides and to a great degree in the lead up to Pearl Harbor, and the Japanese were very frightened.
That is true. Absolutely.
So I would say it was also a consequence of prior foreign policy to some degree. Different than 9/11, though, because 9/11 was like so many years in the Cold War manipulating governments finally blew up in our face.
Exactly. And once again, we're not saying that 9/11 wasn't terrible.
No,
and
of course it was.
shook the nation to its core, but it wasn't the starter pistol to something. It should have been like the end note. You know?
And also
we should have changed our ways, because like that's a terrible thing to have occurred, and it was our fault.
And there's also these rare moments in history when you have everybody behind you.
Yeah.
Everybody is unified under a specific cause. And the aftermath of 9/11 was that.
Yeah.
It was like so many people were like, okay, we gotta do something. We gotta change things for the better. And what you could have done is look at the consequences of the actions of American foreign policy and say, we're going to make changes. Because actually, what we did is what the terrorists wanted us to do.
Right.
We went back into the Middle East. We spent trillions of dollars.
Destabilized more governments.
Destabilized more governments.
Yeah.
I mean, how many people died as a result?
God.
If you just count the American military dead, that's one thing, but hundreds of thousands of civilians died.
Exactly.
And so we actually played right into their hands. And as a result, we have, as a nation, overspent. We've become broken. This was, I think, really 9/11.
We burned up so much goodwill in the world.
It was the beginning of everything we're seeing now.
We basically unleashed a reign of terror on the other side of the world. Instead of looking in at ourselves and being like, do we really need to be monkeying with governments, installing new dictators that we think
Puppet
we can control? Like the fucking party here, we think we can like make a dictator and then tell that dictator what to do and it's gonna fucking work. We try it all the time. It never works. But we were like so committed to doing that again.
Well, and we made the Taliban so much more powerful.
We did.
They're so much more powerful. They are now essentially fully
They were a
controlled.
fringe group that was like a leftover. It was a hangover of a Soviet conflict, and we turned them into a major world power.
We also created them.
Well, that's very good point. That's a very
we
good
empowered
point.
them to fight the Russians to make Afghanistan Russia's Vietnam.
Exactly.
We did that.
We did that. That was a choice we made.
You're right. So very different. But yeah, I think one important thing here, I think, because we're approaching the hour point, is thinking about how does this book matter to us? How can we take action in ways that are meaningful that prevent us from becoming full on fascists? Because we're headed that direction.
Yeah.
We're definitely headed that direction.
And I'm not saying that this is a blueprint for how to take down a fascist government.
Right, we're not telling you to go bomb.
We're not
anything.
telling you to go blow up Congress.
Right, none of
Definitely
that.
don't do that.
But look,
I didn't read it. I had dust in my eye.
No, but look,
direct action.
Direct action. Interrupt the system. Yeah. Permitted protests are bullshit.
Yes.
The moment you permit your protest, the moment you give the police a nice little row for what you're going to take, they can redirect traffic, and you're basically just playing into the state's operation.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
You have to do what they did after the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory fire. Was it 1912? 1913?
Yeah.
Either way, early 20th century, his terrible factory fire, all these women died working in New York. Slave labor conditions.
Alice Hoffman has a really good book about that.
Yeah. Do you know the title?
Off the top of my head, I don't.
Howard Zinn covers it in The People's History as well.
Yeah.
But do you know what happened after this fire? All these women died. Hundreds of thousands of people took to the streets of New York. They shut that city down.
Yeah.
And they shut it down until the government was like, we're going to come to the table and we're going to institute health and safety standards. All the health and safety standards you have at work, your breaks, everything that you have as a right as a worker come from protest. They all come from protest. They all come from shutting down systems.
Absolutely. Yes. Whenever there's like a mining strike and then the miners just rise up against them, that's how you get safety in mines.
Right.
Through violent action or direct action.
The width of stairwells?
Yeah.
The width of stairwells has to do with the factory fires.
Absolutely, man. And emergency exits. And all kinds of stuff.
And not locking people in.
We even have a
jobs.
law about yelling fire in a crowded space that is a direct consequence of that fire.
Right.
Yeah.
So you have all these things interrupting. How can you interrupt? You can interrupt with long boycotts. This short boycott stuff,
Bullshit. Day-long boycotts.
Day-long boycotts, bullshit. Week-long boycotts, bullshit. Yeah. What was it? 87 days were the Selma buses? 387,
man. They did it for a fucking year.
And they did it. The only reason they're able to pull it off is because everybody in the community worked together to make sure everyone could get to work, that it wouldn't destroy their lives.
Anyone who had cars was driving people to their jobs.
Because boycotts can be very much a privilege. Very much a privilege.
Man.
If I say I can't shop at Walmart, and I try my best not to, but if I live in a rural town and the only place to get my groceries are Walmart, I cannot boycott.
Well, and another way it's a privilege is that you can choose to, I'm not going to shop at Target because they caved on their support of queer people. That doesn't affect me. I don't shop at Target because I think they're fucking phonies, but I don't suffer either. I just go other places. Yeah. It doesn't do anything actually.
Yeah, pick your target strategically.
Yeah.
Okay.
So if you want to boycott something, get a bunch of people together, rally people together, express why it is necessary. Don't post something on social media. That's asinine. Actually talk to people, actually get people together and then boycott that place. And you might make a difference. That's the other thing. It's not necessarily going to have a strong impact, but you know, if you can demonstrate that it does have any impact to people, they might be willing to go along with it long term. And if you do it long term, if you do what the right does and just like persona non grata a brand on the right for any length of time, they cave. That's what happened with Target. They got mad that Target was like supporting queer people, exploiting us, just selling us merchandise during our month that celebrates a riot, you know, an uprising to, how come we're not talking about fucking Stonewall right now? Like, God damn it. Yeah. Stonewall was a violent reaction to queer oppression where we like went at cops because they would just throw us in jail anyway.
Yeah, we covered this when we were doing the Romero Theater Troupe. I didn't know about very much of the Denver. So Denver had an event called the Gay Revolt.
Yeah.
In the 1970s. Denver basically flooded city council because they had these lewd ordinance laws, okay? These laws that said if they even thought you were homosexual, they could throw you in prison.
Yeah.
And they went around with this thing. I shit you not. It was the Johnny Cash Express. It was a bus that would go around Denver and it would offer free Johnny Cash tickets for the supposed secret concert. And if you said, yeah, I'd like Johnny Cash tickets, then they would arrest you and throw you in jail for lewd ordinance. Under this lewd ordinance. Yeah. And it was I think it was 77. I think it was 77. That seems right, yeah. They basically flooded city council and they held the city council it was almost kind of like hostage, but not really, because they just flooded with opinions on this on removing this particular law. Yes. And they stayed there until they finally removed it.
And if you want a good example of a boycott, because the Coors family is so anti-queer folk, gay people, queer people in Denver and in Colorado didn't drink one of their products for like 30 years until they finally came around and started like, you know, rolling back their disdain for us and their support of people, their financial support of like candidates that would try to ban gay marriage and stuff like that.
So one important thing to think about here too is community building, right? If you look at who has amassed power recently, they have very effectively built communities, or they utilize their communities. Evangelicals have utilized their communities for authoritarian purposes, right? So you're a part of these communities, but at the same time, on the left side of the spectrum, our communities are fractured, and in the middle, we're hyper-individualistic, where I gotta fucking get mine and else, gotta get that Gucci, right? Yeah, whatever it is. So what you have to think about is, how can you build community spaces? It doesn't matter what those spaces look like. They can be secular, they can be religious, they can be poetry groups. Like, I'm a part of a number of poetry groups. Theater, like you're a part of community theaters, right? Various other things you can do. Whatever you can do to build community and rally that community in ways that help protect each other, even just that. Even just protecting your own community begins to chip away at fascism.
That's how the civil rights, that is literally what they did. I think it was the secret sauce for the civil rights movement happening, was like people putting their lives on the line, going out on patrols to protect the people who were visible in the movement from getting, you know, assassinated, thrown in jail, they got thrown in jail all the fucking time, you guys. They went out and did it.
Right.
People who think they support freedom, who aren't actually willing to like stand up for their fellow men and women and non-binaries, keyboard warriors. Yeah, man, they're just not. They don't believe in freedom. And the MAGA movement does not believe in freedom.
No, if you look at the core of the MAGA movement, they have the authoritarian bent. They want the strong man because they feel like they have been disenfranchised by the system, and they have. They're not wrong. They have been disenfranchised by the system in terms of class structures. Right? We've all been disenfranchised by the system. So the right is taking that anxiety and radicalizing them and building communities. And this is why you see Trump have rallies and rallies and rallies.
That's why he hasn't stopped having rallies for 10 years. Absolutely. And you're right. They have been disenfranchised, but not by the people, not by minority people.
No, but that's a story. That's a story the authoritarian
Exactly.
tells. Blame the other, right?
Right.
This is back to 1984.
Yeah.
And then also in V for Vendetta, of course, V becomes a convenient scapegoat for everything, but he uses that to his advantage.
Absolutely. The real people they're fighting are, of course, the Scots.
Right.
Duh.
Yeah. I know. Actually, there's a couple of passages in here I actually had a hard time reading, and I was like, why is the language... Oh, it's Scottish.
It's
He's showing Scottish characters, right? Because he does it phonetically.
Yeah.
And I was like having a really hard time interpreting that at first, and then once I realized it was Scottish,
it took me a couple sentences exactly, and then it clicked in.
Yeah. Maybe the ancient Scottish heritage in me kicked in, or
That's
something.
That's right. Same.
But yeah, so we have to build communities. We have to, and that's really what he's doing here. He's creating a mythology of freedom, a freedom-based community.
Absolutely,
and that's what we have to start doing because for so long now, this kind of freedom, we shout freedom. The mythology of freedom is the bootstraps myth. The myth of the individual. It is not the myth of how do we make all people rise together. You did kind of get that with the trickle-down nonsense.
Yeah.
What they were saying is empower the rich so that they'll benevolently help you. There's dogs that lick the crumbs off the floor at the master's feet.
I feel like the leftist version of Frankenstein was the scientist, and he created his creature. It should be Frankenstein's monster. I feel like the leftist version of that is you can't physically pull yourself up by your bootstraps. That's not how gravity works.
Right.
Well, I'm so tired of hearing people talk about pulling themselves up by their bootstraps. Nowadays, we mostly hear it in an ironic way, but like, oh my God. I did know that.
Yeah, it was satire.
It was co-opted. It's so frustrating. It's so satire doesn't work, you guys. I can't be more clear. Like, satire is always co-opted by people who don't understand it and Fight Club is a prime example. I don't even think David Fincher understood Fight Club, but that's not the point.
South Park is used as a weapon or a bludgeon all the time. Well, satire requires a certain amount of education, a certain amount of privilege to understand.
South Park also loves to both sides everything, which is very frustrating.
I know, they do.
They are funny, but they feel compelled to take a shot at both the left and the right whenever they're lampooning either side. It's extremely frustrating because it muddies the waters.
South Park said.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
And whenever you're both siding anything, just like the news media does all the time, where they want to give equal airtime to Trump, if they're covering somebody else, they're always like, but it's always Trump, they're like, okay, there's a congressman running for a seat in New Mexico over here. And now what's Trump doing? It's like, you don't have to do that. Just report on the news, actually. But
people love to hate Trump.
No, I know.
That's part of why people go to. We talked about this last time. It's part of why people go to Rachel Maddow, MSNBC. They love to hate him. Yeah, they get that emotional rise, that outrage.
They get that hate.
It's almost like a weird sexual thing.
2 minutes hate, man.
2 minutes hate. The 2 minutes hate from 1984 for sure. They love hating.
Yeah, but you can't pull yourself up by your bootstraps. I hate that phrase so much.
For sure.
Whoever created that, they thought they were very funny, and they probably were at the time, but it's a fucking zombie like phrase at this point. It just wanders around. People are like, oh man, I love that guy. He pulled himself up by his bootstraps. No, he did not. People paved roads for him to drive on. We all did so much work that enables people who are entrepreneurs to succeed, but it's usually because they're the ones getting handouts from the government, not working class moms, and they're the ones who are getting tax breaks, not like new parents or whatever.
Right.
Anyway, sorry. That was a digression.
That's okay. That's okay. I think another important thing is that one of the reasons we've had such kind of a clamp down since about 2014, 2015 is that suddenly we have decentered media.
Yeah.
We have media that can suddenly show oh, the police beat the shit out of that guy, and they can show the clip. Like, I mean, it's like Rodney King.
Rodney King was
because
a moment.
They had a recorder. They happened to have a recorder and showed what has been happening to black people for years.
Yeah, someone accidentally caught footage of it on his camcorder.
Right, on a camcorder. It was like a Super 8 camcorder or something like that, right? So that gets broadcasted to the news, and then. You see in the beginnings of social media, it was so decentralized, and then the algorithms come in and co-opt it.
Yeah,
because that's always what states do.
Yes.
They figure out ways to co-opt any new technology or any new media to amass more power.
Absolutely.
So I think we have to continue to create community-based media. We need to continue to create independent media, and we need to build communities around those kinds of media systems.
Figuring out how to circumnavigate monopolies, I think, is going to be the main thing.
Right.
That resistance movements need to do.
Information monopolies, particularly.
Exactly.
Yeah. How do you get around information? That is, if we can figure out how to get around information monopolies, if we can create systems that can kind of mess up the algorithms somehow. I don't know, any of these people are like anonymous or something. Maybe they can figure out how to like go into Facebook, screw up the algorithms, and like flip the script or something like that.
Anonymous was still a thing. I don't think they are.
Yeah,
if they were, they would be doing stuff right now, right? Like theoretically.
Well, there was something they did a couple weeks ago.
Wait, what?
They were releasing like information or something to public. I forget what it was. I saw some announcement or something.
Okay,
but again, I don't know.
Yeah, it didn't make a huge impact. Clearly, if you saw it and you don't even remember.
I don't even remember what it was.
Yeah.
So clearly, it wasn't enough. So, but we need to break the information monopoly, and that's really the key at the heart of how V accomplishes everything.
Yes.
He breaks the information monopoly.
First thing he does.
First thing he does is he takes away the voice of power.
Yeah.
Literally killing the voice.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And then after that, he slowly whittles away the rest of the people who are then of the departments, which coincidentally, we forgot to say this, are also people who experimented on him. They were all present at his camp in one way or another.
Almost all of them.
Almost all of them.
Yeah, the leader wasn't.
In the movie, oh, no, not the leader.
Yeah.
But in the movie, well, yeah, but the leader is the one who sets it all up, right?
Yeah.
In the movie, they go a different route too, because in the movie, they had a plague.
I think in the first half of that book, you think that's what's going on, because almost all of them happened to be there, but by the end he does have to take out a couple people who weren't there. It's a very convenient red herring situation.
Right.
That's what the detective thinks.
Well, that's why V for Vendetta, the whole first section of the book, you think he's just out for vengeance. You're like, oh, it's a vengeance situation.
It's a literal Count of Monte Cristo situation.
Right.
Yeah.
And then when he tortures Evie, quite frankly, you're realizing something else is going on.
Yeah, what
here.
the fuck?
What is happening? And it's kind of like, holy shit, this guy is maybe a little
because you think she got black bag.
You think she got black bag.
And so you're like, oh fuck, Evie, like he's got to come rescue her. And then he like releases her from her imprisonment because she's not going to break.
Right.
And he's like, you did it. And she's like, what the fuck? And then they have it out.
Right. Then they have it out, of course. So, one other thing, I was watching this great, it's on YouTube here, a guy by the name of Brian Klass. The title of the video is "We Control Nothing But Influence Everything," and he kind of is mixing chaos theory a little bit with holistic thinking that you see in kind of anthropology. In fact, I think he doesn't realize he's unintentionally drawing on a lot of anthropological theory and approaches to the world.
Most people
systems.
Don't. If they're not educated in it, they don't.
Right. And systems theory, system science in general, is really kind of taking a lot. Like Dominell Mehta's really great book, Thinking in Systems. Like I was reading that in grad school as an anthropologist, and I was like, this is just anthropology. People just are not anthropologists, and they're kind of reinventing the wheel. But he was talking about, the title of the talk was "We Control Nothing But Influence Everything." And I think the thing I liked about that is he talks about the complexity of systems. Some of it doesn't, a lot of it doesn't apply, but like how easy it is to unravel systems. And,
sure.
And look, if we all
decided... The more complex something is, the easier it is to break. You just got to find the weak point.
If we all decided tomorrow not even all. If you can get about 10% of your population out on the streets and clogging up cities and shut down economic activities and saying, if you can get 10% of us out on the streets and shutting everything down, and you should, a protest should piss off the status quo. Everyone should be complaining about these fucking protesters clogging up traffic. What are they doing? You should shut down highways. You should shut centers of economic stuff down. You should completely overwhelm everything. If you can get 10% of your population to do that in all the major cities in the country, you have a real revolution. They have to come to the table. And it is, in most cases, so much better to do these things non-violently.
Absolutely.
But in a way that is, they can't get rid of you.
Yeah.
That you have to be an infinite pest if you want good social change.
The French are super good at that, man.
The French are super good at that, yeah.
They never lost their taste for revolt.
Yeah. Unfortunately, when they had a violent uprising, they brought out all the guillotines. Like, I know people are like, you see all the guillotines, and I've made jokes about that too. Yeah. But then what do you get? Napoleon. So you have to be really careful about how you approach.
That's a very astute observation. Absolutely. Most people don't follow that to its natural conclusion.
Right.
Yeah, which is where you get a tyrant.
Yeah.
After that, yeah.
So you have to be careful if you're going to use... Everything's a chess game, right? Yeah. With all resistance, and you have to think strategically, but at the core, all you have to do is build stronger communities.
It's so smart because he accounts for that. He gives them a non-violent champion in the end.
Right. He takes the violent champion out and gives you Evie, who refuses to kill.
Yes.
In the end.
So smart.
Right. Now she does blow up the building, but that she doesn't kill anybody.
Yeah.
Because they had essentially, you know,
there's like an event going on where it's like going to be empty.
Yeah.
I forget what the deal was. Yes, of course, the riot is happening concurrently with that. Yeah.
Right.
Of course.
So the symbol is the destruction, right? So giving people a good story, giving people a good new myth. This is like, you know, for all the problems with the American Revolution and all the ways and it very much was co-opted by a bunch of rich white guys.
Weird how that happened. The principles and ideas of what we were trying to do were a good story. Hamilton is like the best, man.
Right.
That musical fucking slaps. It's not historically accurate, but it's good.
No, it's really good.
Yeah.
I saw it live in November. It was fantastic.
Yeah, same.
But yeah, so this kind of mythos of like rising up for freedom, for never finding satisfaction for the way things are, for constantly pushing. And it is hard. And I know because I work 7 days a week right now. It is an unbelievable amount of work, but I'm here, you know, talking about books, reading books, trying to think, trying to push back in ways that I can here and there, all that stuff. So, you know, you
can do it.
Yeah, you can do it. Yeah. You can absolutely do it.
You do that, and you can also, nice segue, write a book.
You can write a book. Yes, thank you. So, little shameless self-promotion. I just got my author copies of my next novel. It's out May 17th, Shades and Shapes in the Dark. It is not about political resistance, but it's a story of a young girl who has to fight back over the course of 40 years of her life. She encounters this evil shadow monster, and she has to find successful ways to resist over the course of her life. Finding new friends, building communities, even though this creature is killing the people that she loves around her, even as she's trying to fight back, trying to find a way forward. So thanks, Matt.
You're welcome.
A little self-promotion. It's out May 17th. You can pre-order it right now in all your favorite stores. So yeah, thanks. And any final thoughts?
No, I just think that V for Vendetta is great. I'm glad you liked it.
You should read it. It'll blow your mind. Yeah. You know, prepare to have your mind blown. Absolutely. You know, some of the other books, Direct Action and Ethnography, Why Civil Resistance Works. This nonviolent stuff will get you killed. Those are great other books.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so our book for next time, we're going to cover Kim Stanley Robinson's book about climate change and fighting back against climate change, A Ministry of the Future. It's a near-future science fiction. It starts in 2020. They build this organization called the Ministry of the Future. I've already read it. Matt has not.
Yep. I think this is going to be the pattern.
This is going to be the pattern. One of us has read the book, probably. But it's really, how can we solve climate change? Yeah. So that's the book we're going to cover next time. thanks for coming to Resistance Reads and sticking with through our sometimes meandering.
I was a little
dialogue.
unfocused this time. I got too angry. I'm sorry about that.
That's all right. It's easy. It's easy to get passionate, but yeah, check it out. And we will see you. We're gonna figure out the schedule probably in another 2 or 3 weeks.
Exactly.
So, have a good one. Okay, I don't know where I ended the stream, so I don't know where that's gonna stop, but it should be done.